So this is my life story. This is the short version. Born and raised in Virginia. Born and raised to two parents. When I tell you this story, I remember saying to myself one time, hearing my own story would be easier to believe if my parents were on drugs or something. My story would make more sense if they were crackheads or alcoholics or something like that. But because they weren't, a lot of things that I experienced didn't make sense to me. That's why I know no one was secret. Because if you looked at the outside of my family, it looked great. My mother was a special education teacher. My father worked for the government, technical specialist, worked with computers, always made really good money. I don't remember, but from what I was told, 2 years old, I was molested by my father. I don't remember. I know my parents separated when I was 2. So 2 years old, molested by my father. Life goes on, I'm living. For what my parents tell me, I was a fairly happy child. I say happy, I was probably extremely happy. Like, mother said she would come in the room, and I was like in my crib, and I would just be smiling, like for no reason, awake and smiling in the crib by myself. Like that was normal, everyday thing to come in the room and see me grin for no reason. That was just the kind of child I was. So I was a fairly happy child. I'm a happy person now. See, just like that.
Hey, Mom.
She reenacted the story. So that's how I was. My parents separated, and again, I'm pulling principles. So even though both parents were present, now both parents absent, so I do know what it's like to live in a single family home. I also know what it's like to have a father, to not have a father, and to have a father who's not a father. Because my parents, first of all, before I get to that, I was 6 years old, time progresses, and my family was fairly close-knit. My mother had 11 brothers and sisters. It was very interesting because my mother had 11 brothers and sisters. My dad was the only child. Very interesting contrast of personalities and backgrounds. My family is very close. The church that I went to, family church. Everybody in the church was almost pretty much related in some shape, form, or fashion. But everybody was in church, heavy in church. It was normal for people to be falling out in the Holy Ghost. My uncle was the pastor. My cousin was the minister of music. I was related to everybody. Church was a very functional part of my life. So as I tell you these things, understanding the things that I'm about to tell you happened to me, most of them by church people. Or church people's kids did it to me. So if anybody has a right to have issues with the church, it's me. I don't know what your story is, but if anybody had a valid reason to have problems with the church, I do. 6 years old, I'm getting babysat by my cousins. I have an older cousin. I'm 6, he's 13, and I want to show you something. And I'm molested again. That was the devil's method for introducing me and initiating certain things in my life. That was his method. So, 13 years old, my 13-year-old cousin molested me. At that time, I'm 6. All I know is I look up to my cousin, and he had a secret that he shared with me that I thought nobody else knew. So as far as I know, I don't know whether this is right or wrong, good or bad. All I know is that I look up to him. So whatever he does is a big deal to me. I really need you to understand this because I'm sure all of us have had people that we looked up to that have introduced us to things that have violated and damaged our lives. And now we regret the person. And really, the truth of the matter is, he was 13. Look at kids you know that are 13 years old, and how much do they really know about life? So the odds are he was only reintroducing to me something somebody else introduced to him. At that time, I didn't know that. So life goes on. My parents get back together. When I say I didn't have a good example of what it meant to be a man, my mother ran the house, period. She ran the house. My dad, something went wrong, my dad always left. It was never an optional thing. One of the consistent factors in my family was that all the women kind of ran the family, for the most part. Like, the way they function, and so for future reference, if you see it, this is witchcraft and manipulation. Anytime something was wrong, they will all meet together with the one person. Never failed. Didn't matter how old you were, how young you were, especially if you were male. They will all meet together with you to deal with whatever the issue was. Now, one of these women that was like that was my godmother. To this day, I always say, why did you pick her to be my godmother? That was one of the worst decisions that you ever made in your life. Picking that lady to be my godmother because she was crazy. And I was terrified. I was so scared of her that when I was 7 years old, my normal babysitter that lived across the street from her wasn't home and I had to go to her house. And I stood on the steps of her house and peed on myself.
Oh, man.
I was so scared of her. I was scared of her because I was abused by her. I wasn't sexually abused. She was like crazy. I'll give you an example. When I was 7 years old, she was babysitting me and my cousins, and we would all eat dinner at the table. And, you know, I'm a kid, I'm 7. I want to play. Everybody's playing. And they're going to string beans on my plate, man. I can't finish them. I'm actually literally full. But you know, when you 7 and the only thing left on the plate is vegetables, saying that you're full is not a viable excuse. Especially when everybody around you is having fun. So I'm like, man, I'm full. I want to go play. I can't finish the string bean. She's like, you're not getting up from the table until you finish the string bean. So I'm like, crap, man. So I started trying to stuff them goes down. Well, they didn't all make it down. And some of them were going down. The rest of them in there came back up. I tell you, she was abusive and she was crazy. She was crazy. She made me scoop up all the throw up and eat it.
Are you serious?
I tell you, I was terrified of her. Now, mind you, these are people who, as far as I understood, I'm only 7 years old, I'm supposed to trust with my life. So if anybody has a right to have trust issues, I had a right to have trust issues. You get what I'm saying? I don't know what you went through. And you may feel like all these people did these things to me and I don't feel like I can trust them anymore. But if anybody has a right to not trust anybody, it's me. If anybody has a right to have issues with authority, it's me. Because authority abused me, authority manipulated me, authority molested me. So later on, some things happened, and my mother asked me one morning, what happened with you and your cousin? So I tell her. Again, I'm 7. I don't know what's wrong. I'm just telling you what happened because you asked. And she goes and gives me the speech. Nowadays, because of the way society is, I suggest when you have kids, talk to them at a very early age about things that are appropriate and inappropriate to do with their private parts so they know. They may not understand, but they just know if anything go on down there with somebody else and they ain't a doctor and your mama ain't present, something's wrong. So she gives me that speech. So I'm like, okay, I didn't know it was wrong, so I feel terrible. Not even an issue after that. It's not something that I wrestle with, whatever. I was 7. Dude, my mind, completely innocent to anything sexual. I'm just like, okay, whatever. So throughout that day, a lot of things happened. I was accused of molesting somebody else. I didn't do it. But guess who I was accused of molesting? My godmother's kids. And guess who was doing the accusing? My godmother. For some reason, she keeps showing up in all these things that happen in my life. And I'm a child. Now, the thing that I had to understand, and I think you have to understand, is that whatever God intends for your life, He intends before you were ever born. And maybe, possibly, part of the reason you went through some of the stuff you went through was because of what He intended for your life. Because this didn't happen to anybody else. I don't know exactly to the full extent why me, but I do know that had it not happened, I wouldn't be who I am. I would be somebody else. So, as crazy as it sounds, I wouldn't change any of it. So that happens, detective comes by, and now I find myself later on the day, 7 years old, at my uncle's house, and I literally watched my uncle try to kill my cousin that tried to molest me. Of course, I'm like tripping, because now I don't know a lot about sex, but I know what violence is, and it's freaking me out, because he literally tried to kill him while I was at the house. So they sent us outside. They sent me and my little cousin outside. And we just playing. I mean, when I tell you how, when I talk about innocence, literally I just went outside and started playing soccer. Like, that's how innocent I was and clueless and oblivious to some of the things that were happening. So, from that point on, though, my life changed. You know, when I went home from school, my mother was like extra paranoid. She's extra paranoid. But my parents are back together. So, I'm not smart, but I'm not ignorant. So I've noticed this trend. Mind you, I never seen anybody.